Hi y'all, welcome and welcome back. In this video, as part of our Good Life series, we're going to talk about Jeremy Bentham's view that the goal of life and ethics is to promote happiness for the greatest number. Bentham's ideas laid the foundation for utilitarianism and remain central to how we think about morality, justice, and even public policy today. Jeremy Bentham lived in England during a time of great social and political change. He was a philosopher and a reformer who believed that human beings are motivated by two basic forces, the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain. For Bentham, understanding these forces was the key to building a moral and just society. Bentham's greatest happiness principle holds that the moral worth of an action is determined by how much happiness or pleasure it produces and for how many people. This makes ethics measurable and public, not private or emotional. When discussing pleasure and pain, Bentham says, nature has placed mankind under the governance of two sovereign masters, pain and pleasure. Here, Bentham begins his famous book with a simple but powerful statement. Everything we do, every choice we make, is governed by our desire for pleasure and our aversion to pain. These two forces define what is good and bad, right and wrong. The hedonic calculus. Bentham wanted ethics to be scientific. His hedonic calculus proposes that we can measure pleasure by its intensity, duration, certainty, proximity, fecundity, its ability to lead to more pleasure, purity, and extent. This was his way of turning moral judgment into rational calculation. It was a sort of formula for ethical decision-making. Regarding pleasure, Bentham said, "Prejudice apart, the game of pushpin is of equal value with the arts and sciences of music and poetry. If the game of pushpin furnish more pleasure, it is more valuable than either." This quote captures Bentham's radical belief in the equality of pleasures. He thought it doesn't matter whether the pleasure comes from a child's game or from reading great literature. What matters is how much pleasure it brings. Later philosophers, like Bentham's student and mentee John Stuart Mill, would disagree and argue for what he called higher and lower pleasures. Mill's version is similar to what Epicurus said when he separated pleasure into attitudinal pleasure versus physical pleasure. There's an important point to make here about Bentham's claim that all pleasures are equal. So this idea of the equality of pleasures goes far beyond our discussion of hedonism and utilitarianism. His claim, it carries a powerful implication, and that implication is if all pleasures are equal, then all people's happiness matters equally. This democratic idea would later influence movements for social justice and human rights. Measuring morality. It is the greatest happiness of the greatest number that is the measure of right and wrong. This phrase, the greatest happiness principle, summarizes Bentham's ethical philosophy. Morality is not about divine law or tradition, it's about outcomes. An act is right if it increases the total happiness of society, and wrong if it reduces it. Bentham's vision of equality. Jeremy Bentham believed that the measure of a society's goodness lies in how well it promotes the happiness of all its members, not just the privileged few. This was a radical idea at the time, and it eventually led to practical reforms in prisons, education, and democracy. Bentham's legacy. Jeremy Bentham's influence continues today in cost-benefit analysis, public policy, and moral philosophy. Yet his optimism about measuring happiness raises enduring questions. Can we really quantify well-being? Should moral value always be calculated by outcomes alone? Bentham challenges us to rethink value. If pleasure is all that matters, then equality of pleasures seems fair. But if some pleasures make us more human, more reflective, more compassionate, then maybe not all pleasures are equal. What do you think? Do you agree that all pleasures are equal, or do some kinds of happiness matter more than others? All right, y'all, that's all for now. If you're interested in watching the other videos in this series on the good life, please take a look at those videos posted on our channel. You're also welcome to look at the other videos on philosophy and ethics. Thanks for watching. Y'all have a great day.